Sorry, won't be. No, the video is a training video. Hello.
Oh, I see. You don't play table tennis, no? It's a shame because we need people to play. It's good sport.
Bruce. Hello, welcome back. Look, we're just going to do a nice short video today. Thanks for coming along. We won't be too long. Today, we're just going to look at something that Shihan Mac Robertson from UK brought up. Rochelle, thank you for the birthday message. Yep, I'm a day older than I was 2 days ago. But anyway, Shihan Mac made a point about the shape arm here, Usmako. When you do Uchi, it's not like this. And if you extrapolate that, if you look at images of the bare fist boxers, you know, I don't have any images, but if you do a Google search, bare fist boxers, and then click on images, and 99.9% of the images, they're not like they're shaping up like Muay Thai or kickboxing or boxing. They're shaping up like Kyokushin guys. They're like this. Their hands are in, and they've got this internal rotation of the elbows here. See, like this? And so they're shaping up in a way that is more realistic and practical for bare fist. Now, Mac made a point of that. He just said it's interesting how, with the external rotation of the arm in the Uchi-uke, it's probably more akin to bare fist boxing than kickboxing and so on. Now, I mean, I guess boxing goes back, you could argue boxing as a sport goes back to the 17th century, but men have been fighting each other forever. So at some stage, they closed their fist and went whack. And the gloves, as we know them, were introduced in the middle of the 18th century, but really they're only introduced for training, the amount of training that they do, hitting bags and so on, and probably to save each other's skin. And literally, probably maybe 140, 150 years later, gloves are actually introduced in the sporting arena itself, maybe earlier. The point was it was considered to be unmanly to actually use gloves. So what they would do would just stick to the bare fist boxing. Now, it's really interesting that this bare fist boxing style was very similar to the external rotation in Sanshin, in Uchi-uke, okay? It makes sense though, because one of the things it does is it protects the elbow, it protects the underhook, and I just, if some people love roundhouse kicks, I love protecting the underhook. If you work in all the ranges, from range 1 to range 5, you can't afford to have your underhooks up, not only because you're going to get kicked in the ribs if your elbow's up, but also when you wrestle, you think of an Olympic wrestler from some country where if he can win a gold medal, his life is changed forever. And the difference between a gold medal and a silver medal can be an underhook. Okay, so the underhook protection in the grappling world is supreme. So I think it's really interesting that Shihan Mac brought that up. I also think that it's interesting that with the introduction of gloves, the boxing stance has gone from this to this to this to this to this. And they can kind of afford to have their arms up, one, because they're not going to use underhooks in the striking arts as much. Muay Thai do a little bit, but they have, if we quickly look at that, we're here like this, where if my hands are up here and he goes underhook on me, boom, I'm just going to hit him with an elbow, hit him with an headbutt. Boom, I have gloves on, like that. So the only way that you'd ever get an underhook is if you actually bury your head on the chest like that and control, which is, as you know, what they do when they're tired. I get a little tired, Mitch whacks me, so I'm going to come into range 4 and tie up the arms. But it's an overhook, not so much an underhook. They go underhook, and he has free rein on it. So when boxers tie the arms up, it's an underhook, called the wizard here, an overhook there, like that. See? The barefist boxing was more back here, and someone else mentioned to me that barefist boxers wouldn't so much hit the face with the fist because those rounds went till someone got knocked out and they'd hurt their hands. So it was more hitting the body all the time like this. Isn't that interesting? That it compares to Kyokushin so much with the hands coming in like that, and when the hands are in that position, it's very easy just to boom, boom. You're not going to turn over so much like you do when you've got gloves on because the danger to the knuckles and the danger to injury is very high. Now, from a biomechanical viewpoint as well, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is, because if you look at any anatomical model online, you can Google it yourself, they'll stand in this position, basically like this. Is a general anatomical model when learning basic anatomy of the body. And the hands are what's called supinated. I always think like a cup of soup, right? Like that. They're supinated. So when we bring the hands up in the Uchi and these positions we do in karate, it's really interesting that they follow the anatomical model of the elbow being a true flexor and extensor. And if we're to rotate the hands over, the two forearm bones, ulnar and the radius, they're no longer square in line. They actually turn over and they rotate over each other. And as a general rule, there'll be a more propensity for the elbow to flare out. Not that it has to flare out, but with fatigue and other things going on, it generally will tend to flare out a little bit, which is one of the reasons why Xiao was just talking about. You see the wrestlers, and their hands are generally supinated because it keeps their elbows in. You'll rarely see a wrestler with their hands in a pronated or a palms forward position, because as default, yes, you can elbow in, but with fatigue and speed and timing and so on, it becomes very difficult to, which is just an interesting concept mechanically.
And definitely with the Greco-Roman wrestlers, they fight, they'll come in and they'll fight with their hands. They're in this sort of shape, but they're doing this sort of thing, constantly protecting the underhook. And Marco just mentioned Les Darcy was a great Australian boxer. Look, there's his fighting stance. You see, it's too shiny, isn't it? But you see how his stance there is very much like a Kyokushin fighter. I think it's very interesting. And Soldado de Dios, he says, apparently modern day boxing emanates from England. Yes, that's right. Well, that's, when the rule set started, it became eventually the rules that they used became Mark of Queensberry rules. Previously, there was another set of rules there. Senji's actually heavily promoted both amateur and professional Kyokushin fights with boxing gloves to allow punches to the face. I don't know that I particularly like that. I mean, that's their thing. Good on them. People always argue that you've got to have punches to the face, but Solsai's argument against punches to the face is the very fact that everything changes when you put gloves on. Your fighting stance changes. Fighters fight like this. I mean, if you added punches with bare fist, I guarantee they wouldn't be fighting like this. They'd still be fighting from a distance. They'd just use more head movement and arm blocking.
And do you think, Xian, they'd be more discriminative with their shots? Like the hard with soft and soft with hard?
That's the other thing too, is if the old boxing days were that a round continued until someone got knocked down, well, you could imagine with some of these fights going for an hour and a half, if you're punching them in the head with your bones, you're definitely going to damage your bones. And infections from teeth and so on. So that's why even when you're working doors anyway, maybe not, but generally speaking, you use palm heels to the face and fist to the body, because that's hard on the soft muscular body, but soft, the palm heels on the bony part of the face. So that's a really interesting concept, and I'd be really interested to hear people's ideas of it. Pita Muay Thai fighters used to use hemp. Well, I mean, even in old England, before gloves, they used to put like leather around their knuckles and so on. So it's a very similar thing. But that whole concept of the external rotation here compared to boxing here because of the gloves. And pre-gloves, the fighting stance was more like a Kyokushin stance. You can't argue that. You just look at the photos and then you look at Kyokushin guys and they're like that, you know. So I think it's very, very interesting about that.
And also, Xian, I wonder, was also with Kyokushin, he was also obviously his karate and judoka fourth dan, I believe. And the grappling arts as well. I mean, you've talked about it so many times, protecting the underhook in those positions as well. So perhaps the transfer from no glove striking to grappling requires more external rotation in the upper body. Would that be?
Well, he was so adamant about keeping the armpit closed.
Yeah,
it's really
closing the
interesting.
waki,
Yeah, because he never called it protect yourself from the underhook, but that's exactly what it does. It would protect yourself from the underhook by keeping the waki closed all the time. He also pointed out that closed waki is relaxed shoulder. Relaxed shoulder automatically closes the waki. So Sosai, who would have fought barefist his whole life, would never this concept of defending the head with gloves, but you can be sure with all the street fights and everything he had that he would have had to deal with headshots. It's just that they were done in a different way. It's very important. We recognize that in boxing, you go like that to cover a right cross, or you go like that to cover a left hook, but you do that with bare fist, you still get knocked out, and you hurt your hand, and they hurt the hand. So that's why this sort of thing is more, you know, the Jordan Uke isn't necessarily, they say it's useless. It's not against someone coming down there. It's a really good defense against someone who, when they throw that big, boom, there like that, there's your Jordan Uke. Okay, boom. He throws a straight punch, boom, you're just going to move there like that. Okay, but it's against the big power shots at the upper, you just reach that, boom, there. It's like an upper block more. Okay, so I think there's so much value in the comment that Xian Mak made, the connection between the external rotation, closing the armpits, and the barefist boxers, because they weren't tempted to block things like this. They were blocking things more like karate and punching into the body as opposed to punching into the head. So there you have, that's just some ideas for you to play with. I just thought we'd have a quick look at that. And
it's fascinating when you break it down and think about it.
Yes, I think it's really worth, it's just like the time that Rochelle asked me, why is the thumb on the ring finger going up and on the middle finger going out for Koken? You know, well, I spent a few weeks thinking about it and came with my reason for it. Ask him the reason why.
Something else I just thought of, Xian, from a biomechanical point of view, the external rotation. Solsai said, I didn't hear him personally say it, but through you could always pick out the posture of a karate person, and I think it was a kendo, because
Yes.
Square posture.
Yeah, because of their erect
spine.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the other arts, he said, were a lot rounded and tougher. And if that's the case, that squareness, that external rotation he's talking about here, that does the exact thing in squaring us up posturally.
Yes.
In karate, whereas over the years it's less and less because the rules and the gloves have come in.
Yeah.
So that's interesting posture, that shape that's changed over the decades as well, since also perhaps made that statement.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's very much related to that closing the waki, closing the armpits, because in a way, an erect posture extends you away from their reach. It's only the grappling arts where they want to reach out and grab you, do they bend forward like that. But karate, they're back here because they want to hit you instead. Okay, well anyway, I hope you find that interesting. I certainly do, and I think we'll probably pursue it again further down the track. But the external rotation in this position, you go from here back to there. It's very, very similar. I hope that if nothing else, I hope, a lot of CT will come from that. Well, then I think you're probably right. I think that's the other thing too is you look at some of those old boxers, they didn't strike you as having the punch-drunk problems of the boxers these days. Precisely, if you think about it, bare fist, you'd think their face would be wrecked. But precisely because they weren't really hitting the head that much, they were hitting the body more, that their faces were quite preserved. You go back and look at photos of the old bare fist boxers. Thanks, guys. I hope that encourages you to think about things and see the connection, because you can take it from the stand up to the ground even, and on the ground, the same thing.
You mentioned that, sorry to jump in, but last week's video, you talked,
That's
the Uchi position and Sanshin type position.
Yes, on the ground.
On the ground, yeah.
Protect the armpits and also create a stronger frame. Yeah. But anyway, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed, why not? Please do so. We're still chasing the 2 million subscriber. If you're the 2 million subscriber, you get a new Tesla. Hopefully by then they've got little e-bikes. It won't be so expensive. But anyway, thanks for coming along. I hope that encourages you to give some thought. Subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like, and pass on the word around to your friends. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much. Us.